Hi, I'm Rachel Meliodas, a senior editor at O'Reilly Media, and I am here with Emily Stark and Matt Debergalis, both of whom are big into Meteor. Tell me about it.
Well, thanks, Rachel. Meteor is a framework that makes it very easy to write modern web applications. And so we're excited to be at Fluent because there's this energy in the last year or two where developers want to build something that feels modern, something that has an interface that's fun to use, that feels interactive and engaging. And the challenge that people run into, and I think what's come out in a lot of the talks today, is how hard that is. There's just lots of moving parts now. There's not one or two things you need to learn, but a dozen different technologies that you have to be conversant in before you can build one of those apps. So Meteor is a different approach that we've been building for a couple years that makes it much easier and much faster to be able to write great applications. It ties together a lot of the new ideas that people are thinking about, and it does it in a way that right out of the box, for someone who's just getting started with JavaScript, someone maybe who's been used to Rails or to one of the older platforms that runs on the server, a great way to be able to build one of these full stack JavaScript applications.
Excellent. So I think I had read that it's basically a distribution of open source packages. And can you tell me a little bit about the pieces that make up Meteor?
Well, it mimics a lot of what people have talked about today. So you need a system for keeping the data in your application up to date. You need something, what we call a reactive templating system, which makes sure that the screen draws itself so that as that data changes, if you post a new message or if someone votes for a story, that should make the screen look different in some way. And part of what's interesting about Meteor is we almost don't want to talk about those parts too much. They're modular, and you can pick and choose the pieces you want, but what's really exciting is that they work well together. So the first thing you want to think about isn't all those parts and what they're called and what they do. It's how easy it is to be able to use them put together to be able to write a great app. And then after you've gotten started, you can start to dig into those differences and you can start to explore customizing.
Is there a particular type of app that you think where Meteor really shines, or do you think it's just a great way to think about developing apps?
What do you think?
I use it for all the apps that I ever write now, but there's definitely there are certain requirements that your apps could have that we're not quite there yet. But we have a long roadmap of things we're working on. So, for example, we don't have server-side rendering right now. So if you need your app to have a very fast initial page load, then Meteor might not be for you right now. On the other hand, there are all these community packages being written. So we have one very active community member who just wrote a package called Fast Render that you can install into your app, and then it does a lot of tricks behind the scenes to speed up your initial page load. So there's definitely some things that we aren't great at right now, but the community's filling in the holes, and I think pretty much all of them are on our roadmap to get to as soon as we can.
That's really interesting. So you have tell me about the community around this, because that's so important with any language or framework.
It is, and I think of us as having two products at Meteor. One of them is the open source framework, but the other one is the community. And you can't have one without the other.
Totally agree.
So we have people who run meetups in 50 some odd cities around the world. We have a monthly event called Dev Shop, both in San Francisco and in London, where people come together and give talks on packages they've written, applications they're building, or they just come to learn. So we give them a space to be able to meet other people and get a sense of what it's like to be part of this community. I think it's a big ask to change your framework. It's something that is partly about the tech, but I think for a lot of us, we try to look around and see what are the other people like who are using this. Is it fun? Am I going to have a job? Will I be excited about this in 2 years or 10 years? Because I'm going to be using a new framework for a long time. And I think just like Fluent's gotten started in the last few years, a lot of people are starting to ask that question. And so for me, it's incredibly gratifying that we have thousands of people who aren't just using Meteor, but who are writing packages, who are giving talks, who are coming together for these sorts of events. I think that's a great way to look at a project and to try to understand what it's really like inside.
Totally agree. I couldn't be more on point, I think, with that. I mean, it makes a product, I think. So let's talk about security. I know that you have focused a lot on that. So web security has its ups and downs. My question is always, how do you get developers to think about security along with UI and making things fast and stuff like that?
Well, it's a big challenge, but the great thing is that we're in such a good position to educate developers and to give them tools to make their apps just secure by default, because we're making it really easy. So, for example, there are all these new client-side security mechanisms where the server can send a policy down to the browser, and then the browser enforces it. And these are very new, modern mechanisms. People don't know that much about them yet. They're not your standard web knowledge yet. So we have a package in Meteor called Browser Policy that makes it very easy to configure these policies and give you reasonable defaults. So it's things like that, things like being able to tell our developers, you should be using this package that we provide. We're making it really easy for you. We're giving you the reasonable defaults and giving you easy APIs for adjusting those defaults. So that was one of the reasons that I was really excited to work on Meteor, is just being in that position of giving developers these great tools. And we think so much at Meteor about the nice APIs, and anytime we add a feature, we put so much time into designing it and thinking about what's going to be easy to use, what's going to be fun to use. And when you put that together with security features, then you get something that people actually want to use and want to think about. So I was even, we did this browser policy package just because it seemed like the right thing to do. But then there are tons of users who are actually using it, and it's really fun to hear about how they're using it and the questions that they have, and then we can improve from their feedback. So we put these things into the framework, and when we make them nice enough to use, then people actually start using them, which is very gratifying.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
One more question I have for you actually about cryptography. I saw that you have done some of that. Can you tell me a little bit about how that plays into what you're doing now with Meteor?
Sure. So I would say the overlap is more in kind of the web security realm rather than the cryptography realm.
Sure.
But there is some overlap. So for example, right now Meteor uses a protocol called SRP, and that's a protocol for users to authenticate to the server without actually giving their password to the server. So this is a cryptographic protocol. It's fairly well studied and well understood, but it's not usually standard practice for web applications to do that. So we've been using that for a long time, and it's served our users very well. We're going to add the option to also use a more standard protocol called bcrypt, which is a password hashing algorithm where you give your password to the server and it hashes it with this algorithm called bcrypt before storing it in the database. So that's kind of the standard practice. We're gonna soon have a push to give that option to our users. But we also have this really cool protocol called SRP, which is more useful for mobile clients or desktop clients than web clients. So it's exciting to explore these different options, and what I like about working on Meteor is that we don't always restrict ourselves to doing the thing that everyone else is doing. We give ourselves the freedom to explore different things, in this case, different cryptographic protocols that you wouldn't get the chance to explore in a framework like Rails or Django, where they're doing things in the more traditional style.
Right.
It's kind of the Wild West with security. We're moving most of the application from the server to the client, and we're moving from a really well understood regime built around HTTP, where we've spent 20 years perfecting or at least working around the way it works, to a real-time protocol, something built on top of a WebSocket or something similar to that. So there's an opportunity, I think, to do a lot of this stuff early on in that generation of technology. If we get it right, it's going to have a dramatic impact on the world. We can live in a world where website security breakdowns don't mean that millions of passwords are let loose, right?
That would be
Which
nice.
happens all the time. There's no good reason for that other than we didn't get the primitives right 20 years ago to prevent something like that from happening. So it's a big responsibility, but I also think a big opportunity where, really the next couple of years, I think, will cement a lot of how people think about security in a JavaScript application. And I think we're doing a lot of the pioneering work on how best to put those pieces together and laying down some ground rules so that people can build great apps and not, through ignorance, be exposing their users to the sorts of problems that so many of the old apps have.
Awesome. Very impressive, everything you said. I think people should definitely check out Meteor. So I want to thank you both for talking to me this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.